and welcome to the next episode of our New South Wales Referees Life Member Series. Today we're joined by a former first grade touch judge who liked to keep to himself and keep a low profile, going about his business with minimal fuss or fanfare. He had numerous achievements on the field and he contributed plenty of it to both the New South Wales Referees Association and Canterbury Referees Association. It's Peter Longhurst. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Daniel. It's nice to talk with you.
It is indeed. How have you been?
Yeah, good, except today was an extremely hot day in here in Sydney and we couldn't get through 18 holes of golf at La Perouse at St Michael's. Matter of fact, I thought I was going to have a death on my hands at one stage. One of my playing partners has got a pacemaker in and he wasn't looking real flash with 2 holes to go, so I demanded we all go in. So other than that, fine, thank you.
Oh, gee. How did you hit them anyway?
Pretty well today. I was going very well. We looked like we were going to take their money, but we called all bets off. So, come home and had a swim. Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, your family life, you're a grandfather. Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
Yeah, the ones that are on screen at the moment are the Australian ones. They live not very far from here. The 3 boys on the right hand side of me, standing up, they all belong to my daughter, my number 1 daughter, my eldest daughter. The little guy I'm holding is my son, my youngest son. That's his son. So. Yeah, we've got 4 here in Australia, another one on the way. My son's about to have another one, and we've got 2 in the United States.
Okay. And any potential footy players amongst them? I can see a few soccer jerseys there.
Yeah, the one in the middle, the one standing up in the middle, that's Spencer Millington. He's just been selected out of 600 kids to go into the Swans Academy. He's only 10 years of age. His brother standing beside him, you're not going to believe this, is only 8 years of age. But Spencer's been an absolutely fantastic footballer. I used to take him down the park when he was only 2 or 3 years of age, and he just had the knack of being able to kick a football. And I had people used to stop me and they'd say, "How old is this kid?" And I'd say, "Well, he's 2 or he's 3," and they were just gobsmacked. Yeah, he's doing very, very well. He's a very, very good soccer player too. So, yeah.
No, the big boys for 8 years of age.
He's year 10. He's 10 years of age, and the other bloke's 8 years of age. So, and that's my American family. They live in Austin, Texas, at a place called Barton Creek. She's our one little girl. That's my second daughter. So we've got three kids, 2 daughters and a son. That's the young bloke, Kai, and that's their father, Rob. So, and my daughter's name is Jacqueline.
Okay. So other than golf and family, what keeps you busy?
I'm still doing a bit of coaching, bit of business coaching. I retired about 3 years ago now. And I'm doing a little bit of business coaching. So I've got a couple of people that I mentor and coach. I've been doing a lot of work with the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce, and I've been involved in their mentor program now for about 7 years. Matter of fact, I only just had my next mentee allocated to me yesterday. She's in Melbourne, so I'll be coaching her over the net. But I really enjoy doing that. I still stay involved with a couple of old clients. So I'm actually going in for a client meeting on Tuesday into the old office. Fairly high profile sportsman. He still wants me involved with his affairs. And there are other clients that still want me involved. So I still stay involved in those. I was the director of a major bedding manufacturer for 30 odd years. Been involved with that company for 50 years, and I still do a bit of work with them as well. So I get over to the factory and become a bit of a nuisance and try and tell them how to make beds and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I keep pretty busy actually. And Lois and I have been doing a lot of travelling. although in the last 12 months, of course, we haven't been travelling. Certainly these guys you see on the screen with little Georgia there, our only granddaughter. I said to her the other day, I don't think the next time I see you, I think you'll have a licence. Yeah, she's just turned 3, so yeah, we don't look like seeing them now until 2023.
Yep.
It's an interesting story. That photograph is taken right in front of the beautiful clubhouse that they've got, the country club that is just around the road from them in the part of in Texas and where they live. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Yep. Now, you talked us a little bit through your working life. Looking at your career away from footy, education is important to you, and you went to St Greg's, which no doubt would have fostered some of the interest for football. Can you tell us about those early years coming through school at St Greg's?
Yeah, well, my father died when I was only 7 years of age, and he left my mum with myself and my sister, who was only 5, and my brother was only 18 months old. I went off the rails for a little while. I started to play up a fair bit, so my mum decided to send me to boarding school, and we had a connection to St Greg's through other members of the family. The picture on the screen at the moment is a very interesting one. That's dorm 1, and there's 62 boys in that room. A couple of them in the front there have actually already died, unfortunately, but we were in that room for 2 years. Now, it was in that room that I actually met a guy called Brother Matthew Cundy, and Brother Matthew and I had a real love of rugby league together, and there was about 6 of us in the dormitory, and he used to get us up early in 1962 and 63, I'm sorry, and we used to listen to Frank Hyde's call of the test matches coming back from England, and that was in about 2 o'clock in the morning, and you could barely hear Frank, but he'd come and go. And Brother Matthew said to me after the first test, he said, he used to call me Grandma, actually, because of the way I got around on the paddock and in the 4 stone 7s. He said, Grandma, why don't we write a letter to Frank Hyde? I want you to write a letter to Frank Hyde. So I wrote a letter to Frank, and Frank then replied to me. I've still got the original letter. That's it there, actually. It's pretty hard to see, but it's later on in life, when I eventually got to first grade, I approached Frank and I explained to him about the letter, and when I took it to him, he got quite emotional about it. So and we became a bit friendly, actually, because of that letter. But so I've still got that letter. I'm not quite sure what to do with it, whether to give it to the NRL and put it in their museum, or if they want it, or give it to St Greg's College. I'm not quite sure.
Yep. No,
but Brother Matthew was a guy who really engendered me, my further love of rugby league. I was a mad St George supporter at that time, and he really encouraged that I carry on with it at the end of my schooling career. He ended up leaving the Brothers not long after this, and ended up living in North Queensland. He had 6 children, and he actually died last year. So he was a great coach, and a great mentor to all of us. So we had a lot of fun in that dormitory. 62 boys. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Now, fact or fiction? You enjoy writing?
Yes.
Yes. Now, an unnamed close friend, a fellow life member, has told me that even these technological ages, that you have always and still continue to be a writer, and would often send letters of either commiseration or congratulations to people. Why is this?
Yeah, look, I'm of the firm belief that you should say thank you to people or congratulate people when they achieve something. And that old friend of mine, I think I know who it might be, is right, and he's been the recipient of quite a few of those letters. I just believe that you should take the time to sit down and write to somebody. I don't believe you should do it over the net or by text. I think just by taking the time to sit and write, you are giving your full attention to the other person. The other person gets a letter and says, wow, this guy has actually taken 10 minutes or 5 minutes or so to just to think of me and me only, and then put it in the mail and then send it off to them.
Yep.
And then I end up writing a book on that subject, but we're probably going to cover that a little bit later. So, yeah, I believe I'm a very firm believer in that, and I drive my wife nuts. I just keep writing letters all the time, but I can't help myself, and I just believe it's the right recognition for the people doing the job.
No, I think it's a fantastic philosophy, and I think people really do enjoy that personal touch, and it means that much more. So your passion for writing can be seen in the book that you have written, titled "A Simple Thank You: Your Key to Happiness and Success." How did this come about, and what is the subject matter?
Well, it's been in my head for a long, long time, and one thing that Brother Matthew told me is that well, that's a copy of the letter we wrote to Frank. Frank Walsh. Sorry, I thought it might have been to Frank Hyde. That was my resignation letter. Look, I had it. Brother Matthew said to me, "Mate, don't be scared to dream, and you can achieve whatever you really want to achieve." And I said to him at the time, I was only 10, 12 years of age, I think. And I said to him, well, I want to achieve the top of whatever I do in rugby league. And I said, I want to write a book at some stage. And he said, where'd that come from? I said, I don't know. But and I sort of felt that I had to do it because I told him that I did it, but it'd been sitting in the back of my mind for a long, long time. I then started to do a lot of traveling, particularly with AHB, the bedding manufacturer, up and back to China and all around the world. And while I was sitting up in aeroplanes, I started writing chapters. I worked out the chapters, and then I started writing the book. And I was quite proud of myself at the end of it when I self-published through Amazon. And when I got to the end of it, and you get a letter back from Amazon, you get a note back from Amazon to say you are now a published author. So it's I'm proud of the fact that I've done it. A number of people helped me. Actually, the guy who nearly died on me today, he was the one who actually came up with the name. I had several names, and I ran them past various friends, and he was the one that actually came up with that name. And then the book cover and everything you can do over the net through various apps and that sort of stuff. So yeah, there it is. I'm proud of the fact that I have written it, and I've sold quite a few copies, but I give more away than I actually sell. I told my wife that if by selling a book that this will pay for a couple of trips to the United States to see her daughter. It hasn't even got her into the cab, she reckons, to this day. So, she gets quite annoyed with me giving them away as much as I do. So yeah.
So for any of the everyday people out there that would think it's a time-consuming initiative to take up, can you sort of paint the picture? What's the sort of timeline from going through the thoughts in your head, getting them down on paper, doing a draft, an edit, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, the timeline is probably 18 months to 2 years. It was interesting, I've bumped into Steve Waugh a few times. He lives up around here in Cronulla, and he wrote books when he came back from various tours. And I asked him once, how does he do it? And he said he hand wrote most of it, and then he tried to put it on the computer, but he was a bad typist. I told him that I'm exactly the same. I think I probably hand wrote that book probably 3 or 4 times. I then put it on the computer, I don't know, 6 times, I don't know. And then after it was edited, I sent it around to various people who have it edited, particularly my son-in-law in America, who you saw a photograph of him just recently, and his twin brother. And they were the most challenging replies that I got back. They're very intelligent blokes, and I really nearly had to rewrite the book again. So it takes about 18 months, and if you're not a good typist, it takes a long time. And it does. It's very, very time consuming. I've said to my wife, I want to write another book. She said, you write another book, that's it. I'm out of here. So because you've got to devote a lot of time to it. A lot of selfish time. Yeah, a lot of selfish time.
Now, moving on to your refereeing career, I'm told that Canterbury were lucky to have you join them, as age restrictions were around in those days and you couldn't join St George at that time.
That's right. I was 18 years of age, and I rang Arthur Cole at St George, and I was going to start to play, and I was actually playing with a team that Eric Cox was very closely involved with, Bexley Kingsgrove actually. But I suddenly realised I was very tall and thin and skinny, and I wanted to educate myself, etc. And I thought, well, if I go and start playing open weights with it, because I'd only ever played weight divisions, I got as far as 9 stone 7. That's all I got to. These guys are going to kill me, but I still had this real love for rugby league. So I thought, oh heck, I'll referee. So I rang up Arthur Cole. Arthur said, no, I'm sorry, we don't take junior referees. But he said, Canterbury do. Ring up Reg Dick. So I rang Reg, and Reg said, yeah, come up to a particular oval on next Sunday. We're running trials, and up at Chester Hill and Abbott Park, Chester Hill. I'd never even heard of Chester Hill. I didn't know where Chester Hill was. So I went up there. Interestingly enough, I parked my car. I was still doubtful. Thought, oh, will I go ahead with this or not? I got out of my car, and a bloke approached me with all his white gear on. It was a bloke called Norm Rumpf. Now, the blokes in Canterbury will know Norm very well. Norm was a very intimidating character. He was a lovely bloke. He was a funny man, but he was a very intimidating character. And I virtually got back in my car. I thought, oh no, I couldn't do it. And then he must have seen me, and he said, are you Peter Longhurst? I said, yes. And he said, come here. So I went down and met one of my heroes, and went from there. So yeah.
So
my hero was Jack Harvey. He was the best referee that I ever saw. Any of the referees. So, and he actually took me under his wing from that day onwards, actually. And I was very, very, very fortunate. Very fortunate.
Yeah, we've spoken to a number of Canterbury life members and referees throughout this series, and I think about just about every one of them have touched on the impact that he's had on their career.
Yeah, look, he was just a fantastic man, and great referee. He couldn't go on to grade because he was a penciler for a bookmaker, and so his Saturdays were tied up, and so he couldn't go on and do it. He would have gone. Yeah, he would have gone to the top in my view. Anyway, yeah, he was a great bloke, Jack. He died about 3 years ago now. We lost Jack, but yeah. Anyway.
Now, you certainly made the most of your time at Canterbury. You're doing a couple of C-grade grand finals in 1973 and 1974. What are your memories of your time at Canterbury in the district, and what was that grounding like for you?
Look, the grounding was fantastic. I had a lot of competition. I mean, Cole Turnell and we butted heads a lot. We were really good for each other. And the competition, the players that we had at that stage were the really good players of the Canterbury sides coming up through the junior ranks. Paponis and the Hughes brothers, etc. And Cole and I were both doing C grade at that time, which was a really strong grade, and we'd go back for a drink at one of the RSL clubs or bowling clubs, and we'd sit down and we'd compare notes as to how we'd gone, because we were at different grounds, of course, and we were really pushing each other. In my view, he was a far better referee than I ever was, but and was really fantastically fit. But, and he went to grade about 2 or 3, maybe 3 years before me, but. The grounding there was great, and the A grade was strong. And we always had the likes of Reg Dick and Jack Harvey and these guys in the background, looking after us. And we're a pretty close-knit community, Canterbury. We still are. I can remember when I first went to grade, when I first went to first grade, the first phone call I got was from Brian Wiseman. And Brian said to me, mate, it looks like you're going to be in first grade, a first grade touch judge for ever. So I want to give you some advice. And the advice is there's 3 blokes you've got to watch very, very carefully. They'll do things in back play that you will not believe actually happen. And he said, you got one this weekend. And that guy I had that weekend, we actually sent off on a report for myself. So, and he was an extremely high profile footballer. So we're a very close knit community, and still are.
I think many of the people we speak to, those friendships that are formed in the early days are just ongoing, and they last for a lifetime. Now,
yeah.
On the road to your grading, you touch judged the 1974 President's Cup Grand Final. What are your recollections of this experience?
Yeah, well, look, that was great. The great Johnny Colenso did that game. Yeah, look, it was a great appointment to get, and John was really running number one amongst all of us in the President's Cup stuff. And Bert was going well too. Herb Reedy, he died last year, I think it was. John tragically died quite a number of years ago at a very young age, only 40 odd years of age. Probably my lasting memory was that we ran out on the ground. We had no flags, so we had to run up and down the sideline with our flags for about the first 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. It was actually about 5 minutes, I think. We copped a fair bit about that. And it was my first game on the cricket ground. Great thrill for the three of us, actually. And there's some good players playing then too. They went on to do some really good things. So yeah, it was good.
So in 1975, you graded to the New South Wales ranks as member number 654.
Yep.
How did you receive the news at the time? And in your eyes, was this just the start of something bigger?
Look, I was delighted. I mean, absolutely delighted, and delighted at the fact that there was 3 of us from Canterbury that got graded. It was Les Matthews, Michael Keeble and myself got graded, and there was quite a few of us of 6 having got graded with John Colenso. I was very close to John. I was really excited. I remember the night it was announced at our meeting at Canterbury, and Peter Moore was there, and he came up to me and he said, "I'm responsible for you getting graded." And I said, "Well, thanks very much." He was also responsible for me going out of grade too, quite a number of years later. And I went up to him and made sure he's aware of that too. But it was a real excitement, because there was a good group that year. There was some really good referees, and Terry Murphy was there, of course, and poor old Terry only died recently. They were good blokes. They were good. It was a good group of guys. We were pretty close for a long while, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, in 1975, you very quickly made your first grade debut as a touch judge. Now, you've told me a bit of background about the scenario at the time. Your debut came in round 7 when Parramatta played Penrith here at the old Cumberland Oval. Don McDonald was the referee and Ron Freeman was the other touch judge. Can you describe this experience? And can you maybe give us a bit of background? You mentioned that there were a few blokes that were blooded quite early there in their careers.
Yeah, they decided for some reason that year, because there was quite a number of us that were graded, to actually give us first grade experience. And that was exciting for us. And I can remember John ringing me up and saying, "Golly, I'm on with Laurie Breeze, and we're on at Belmore or somebody, and it was first grade." He said, "Gee," he was really nervous, because Laurie was a bit of an ogre, we didn't know what Laurie was going to do. I actually knew Don very, very well, so I was very comfortable with Don. With Don McDonald, but it was really, really good. And I think it was a really great initiative, actually, that they actually gave us a feeling for what it's like to be involved in first grade and to be on the paddock with the first grade players and the first grade referees. And and Don, who I was with, was very, acceptable to me, and said, "Mate, if you've got a report to make, I want you to come in, and I want you to tell me, etc." And so I was just relaxed right from the word go, and it was just a fabulous experience. Yeah, great experience.
Now, throughout your career, you also did the 1978 SG Ball Grand Final, won by Canterbury over Penrith. This was done as a referee. At what point in your career, your grade career, did it become clear that the touchline was the way forward for you, and maybe a bit of background? surrounding how that came about.
Right. Well, it was in about 1980, I think, because in 1978 I did the SG ball, and then 1970 I went back to grade, and then because I had a year off, I had a year off to paint the house. And Lois said, if you're going to paint the house, you're not refereeing. So that was when I listened to Frank every week, and there's a few stories there I got with Frank, listening to those stories. But anyway, I went back to grade in 78 after doing the final, and then in 1979, it was 1979, 1980, Michael Stone, if you're listening to this, Michael, you'll remember this quite well. We had the second last game at Cogra, and Graham Annesley was doing the game. I'd been out the night before and I wasn't feeling real flash, and Stoney was the only graded, he got graded that year, so it was either 79 or 80, I can't remember when Mick got graded. He was the only one out of the batch that hadn't had a centre. And I just jokingly said to him as we came in to get stripped, I said, look, it was a third grade game, and I said, look, if Annesley breaks down today, York's taking the game, Stoney. And Annesley said, well, hey, hold on a minute, I'm sitting here, what's going on? And you wouldn't believe it, just before half time, Graham trod in a hole or something or pulled a muscle. And I went around behind the sticks for a kick of goal because Graham got a penalty from a scrum, so he wouldn't have to be able to run. And I went around and I said, mate, you're going to get the centre. I said, Annesley's gone. And I said to the ball boy, see that big man over there? That's Mr. Eric Cox. Go and tell him that the referee's broken down. So, and then Coxie came into the room, threw the whistle at me, took whistle off Annesley and threw it straight at me and said, it's your centre. And Stoney said, no. Stoney's bending over to get his whistle out of his bag. And he said, no. He said, we've worked it out. What's going to happen, Eric? He said, I'm telling you, you're doing the game, Longhurst. And that's it. So that was that game. And I did another game at North Sydney Oval. And I went like a train. I got a really good report. And that was the last of my games in the centres. And I started to do a few reserve grade lines. And then suddenly somebody realised I had the wherewithal to do first grade lines. And so it was late 79 or 80 that I went on to first grade lines. Yeah, and forever. So I knew I was going to go forever then. And I thought, well, I'm going to make the best of this because, it's still refereeing, and you've got the best seat in the house, and it's exciting, and there's lots and lots and lots of people there. And there was a shot of back of George's head. George Benson I used to run with, he used to wear a hairpiece. And we were coming off, that's at Belmore Sports Ground, and one day we were coming off, might have been that game. And all the people in rugby league knew George very, very well. And this lady leant over the fence and she said, George Benson, you bastard, and went to grab him and grabbed his hairpiece and lifted it up off the top of his head. And she got the greatest shock of her life. She didn't know what she'd done. And she dropped it back down and it just went higgledy-piggledy onto his head. And we came back into the room. I think Jack Danzy was the referee, actually. And, laugh, and George was laughing his head off. And it was back in the days before mobile phones, so nobody took any photographs of him. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Mr. Harvey before. Who were some of the other mentors or influential figures for you coming through from early on in your career in the district right through to the time during your first grade career?
Well, I said Brian Wiseman. Brian was a great referee. He was a fabulous centre referee. But he was a really, really good touch judge. Reg Dick, of course, because Reg was, had done so many grand finals and test matches and things like that. We had a number of other mentors at Canterbury. I can't mention all the names now, but we had a number of mentors there. And when I got to grade, look, just the other blokes I refereed with in grade, blokes would help each other out. They would say, look, I saw you doing a game the other day and I don't think you should be standing in that position. I mean, Doug Winton was one of them. It was really all very good advice. I just see the name Cook, and Gary Cook was actually a bit of a mentor too. Gary, even though he was a centre man, he used to say to me, this is where this is what I think you should be doing and looking at doing with your career. and that sort of stuff. Laurie Brewers, I mean, Laurie was great. Laurie was cranky with me on a number of occasions, but he was and he was very straightforward. You know, he wouldn't mess around with you whatsoever. And I love that because I'm exactly the same. I don't suffer fools, and I just say what, and I shouldn't say what I say at times, but I do. And Laurie was like that, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
So there was quite a number of people.
Straight shooters. I think a number of people in refereeing, or most people in refereeing, like it that way. They like to be told whether they're in the right or wrong. I think they'd rather know the truth than walking around on eggshells. Now, you can stake claim to having touch judged the first televised Amco Shield match. Can you speak to the growing importance of midweek football at the time? Now, they also had the Amco Cup.
Yeah, that was an experiment, and they decided that instead of just having the Amco Cup, they would have a schoolboys game. And Cole Turnell did the very first televised game, that one, and myself, and I can't remember the other touch judge was, and I think he died anyhow. But yeah, we did that, and look, I thought that the midweek games were important for the game, and I ended up doing quite a few Amco Cups and KB Cups, as they call them. Even though I used to argue with John Quayle when I'd sit in his office when I became the treasurer, and I used to say to him, mate, why do we keep playing these midweek games? I said, we've got 3 people in that black dog that used to run around like Art Oval, and he just looked up at me and he said, Longhurst, is because we get $1 million for every time you guys run around. So it was an experiment for TV. But they were interesting to do, and I had some really good games. Yeah.
Now, Canterbury, as we mentioned, had a strong representation at the top level, particularly throughout your first grade career, with the likes of Bob Hunt, Barry Bradstock, Les Matthews, Brian Wiseman, Bob Garwood, Michael Keeble, Cole Turnell, and then later on Peter Ryan and Barry Bolton. Great group of gentlemen. Who were some of the others that you rubbed shoulders with or enjoyed the time that you ran with throughout your career?
Throughout my career, I should have mentioned Bobby Garwood more. Bob was a great mentor as well. Still is. We still have our little arguments and tete-a-tetes, but he was very, very good. All the guys you mentioned were great. I mean, I ran a lot of time with George Benson. For some reason, we just got put together, and we went for about nearly 4 years, I think, together. Doug Winton, I did some games with Doug. I've got some really funny stories to talk about with Doug because he's more than straightforward. And Ian McCall, I mean, I ran a lot with Ian. Ian was doing third grade middles at one stage, and we were together for about 6 or 7 weeks in a row. And every week he'd come up and he'd say, how do you reckon I went? And the last week we ran was at Cumberland, and I said to him that day, I said, mate, you know how well you went the week before. Can't remember where we were in Newtown, I think it was. I said, geez, today you've refereed the house down. He got dropped after that, and he went to first grade lines virtually straight away. And eventually ended up having a great career and ended up doing test matches and a number of grand finals and state of origins and all sorts of things, So,
we've got Doug Winton coming up in the next few episodes. Hopefully, a few people have said very straight shooter, but also very funny and relaxed, particularly during matches. Would crack a joke given that.
Very dry. We had an incident where I said in my very first grade game, there was a player in back play, and Brian Wiseman reminded me about, and that was Rod Reddy. He played for St George, playing in Eastern Suburbs, and the sports ground, and Reddy kicked the bloke in the head right in front of me, absolutely right in front of me. So I've come straight in, and Barry Goldsworth was a referee, and Barry and I didn't know each other very well then, but we now know each other extremely well. And of course he said to me, he said, this better be serious, because St George had actually gone in for a try. And I said, well, mate, it is extremely serious. So we go back to near the halfway line, and he just says to Reddy, you're off. And of course, Craig Young went right off his tree. Well, Barry had to referee a fight between me and Young before they had a verbal fight, because I wouldn't cop what Young was saying to me. And I won't repeat what I said back to him, but I thought to myself, I'm pretty proud of what I've said to this bloke. He was the captain of Australia, I think, at the time. And anyway, Rod and I became a bit friendly after that, because he got 7 or 8 weeks. So, but that Doug Winton was on the other line, and when we came in at the end of the game, and we were in the old grandstand at the sports ground, and they had 2 rooms. You had to go through a room, of sort of a ballroom, and then into our referee's dressing room. And John Fleming was the manager of secretary of St George, a big tall redheaded fella, and he was upset because I got rid of one of his star players, and you could hear the door bang as he came down through the first door and opened the second door and stood in front of us and said, "Which one of you so and so has got rid of Rod Reddy?" And of course, none of us were prepared to answer that. And Doug just very quietly got up, very, very quietly, walked to the door, opened the door, didn't say a word, as if to say, "Well, there's the door now, nick off." And it was so funny, you know, and that was just one incident I had with him. And you know, this Fleming just looked around and thought, "Well, I'm not going to get any answers here." And he just walked out, and we'd hear the banging of the doors again. But that was Doug. Doug was very, very good, extremely good referee too. But he was just so calm and collected and funny bloke, very funny man.
I think
Dry at taste.
No, I think it's important to have personalities like that, particularly in refereeing when there's those very serious and often tough times. I think the odd comment here or there to break the ice really helps.
Yep.
Now, in 1981, we talked about the pre-season cup before. You did the Tooth Cup grand final between Cronulla and South Sydney at Leichhardt Oval. This would have been a nice appointment for you fairly early on in your first grade career. Particularly, it turned out to be, I think, a record crowd for that night. What was your memories of that experience?
Oh, look, I've got fantastic memories of that. John Gosher was the referee. They said that there was something like, I don't know, 19,000 at Leichhardt, some figure like that. I don't know, 9,000, whatever it was. I can tell you there was 109,000 there. They were standing 20 deep on tops of roofs of houses, and they had the big Pantechnicon truck there with all the gear and that. You could barely see the truck. There was just hundreds and hundreds of people on the truck. And I can always, my living memory of that is when I ran out of the paddock, the excitement and the number of people there, etc. I felt as though I was running about that far off the ground, and the adrenaline was just pumping. It was the most magnificent experience I've ever had in my life. The interesting thing was it was quarter football, so we came off at half time, come off at quarter time, come off at half time, and at half time, Ghost said to me, he said, what's the penalty count? And I said, "Oh, I don't know, I don't count penalties." And Barry Goldsworthy's father was on the door. So we went out and I opened the door and I said, "Oh, Mr. Goldsworthy," I said, "what's the penalty count?" And he said, "There hasn't been a penalty in the first half of the game." So we went a whole half of football without any penalties at all, because both sets of players, all they wanted to do was play football. It just went from one end of the field to the other. John did an absolutely magnificent job. He just got rid of the whistle. He just realised straight away all they wanted to do was play football. And he just stuck the whistle in his pants, basically, and off he went, you know. And it was just a magnificent exhibition of refereeing, and great night. And I can't remember what the penalty count ended up being, but it was just a fabulous night. Yeah, great night.
So you followed up this major appointment with your first representative appointment as a touch judge in the City vs Country seconds at Bruce Stadium in Canberra. Brian Grant, then based up at the North Coast, was the referee. What were your memories of this? And
great day. Probably my greatest day in rugby league. We travelled everywhere with the players, and a lot of those players were the invincibles. Basically, just come back from England, and we travelled absolutely everywhere with them. I sat on the bus with Craig Young, even though we'd had words or no, we were to have words a bit later than that. Some funny things happened. Steve Rogers stands out in my memory. Sludge was a bit of a character. He was always the last one on the bus. I don't know how many signatures he signed that day, but he never said, no, he didn't say no to anybody. It was just absolutely magnificent. And the interesting thing was that I was with Frank, and I, you know, as I was getting off the plane in Queanbeyan, Frank came up to me and he said, "Oh, how are you going, Peter?" Because we'd become friendly because of the letter. And as we're standing on the tarmac, this bloke walked up and he said, "Frank Hyde," and he shook hands with him, and he had 2 Eskies with him, and he said, "You have been my lifeblood for rugby league," and he said, "I brought a present along for you." And Frank looked at me and he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "I killed a sheep," and he had a sheep for him, and Frank looked at me and he said, "How good's this?" I said, "Mate, Frank, he thinks you're the greatest. I mean, you don't understand what you meant to us people, you know, in rugby league." Anyway, he said, "Well, you better give me a hand later when we're leaving the ground after that later, and we'll you know, you can give me a hand when we get to the other end and take this sheep home." So I ended up giving him a hand to his car later on in the night back in Sydney to take the sheep home. But what a great day that was! I mean, it was an introduction of Canberra to you know, whether Bruce Stadium could handle the people and all that sort of stuff, and the players and everything was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, great.
You mentioned that that's probably your highlight of your career. Do you think that
Bobby Garwood and I went down for that from Canterbury, and
he did the first? I think
he did the first. Yes, yeah. I never sort of forgave him for that, but anyway.
So you mentioned that was your highlight. Do you think that 81 was probably your strongest year in grade with those achievements?
81. We went well in 82, and then we got to 83, I think it was, and we stood at. George and I were going so well, and we were running number 2 or number 1 with Ian and the guy he was running with. Can't think of his
Max
name.
Thompson.
Max Thompson.
Yep.
Max, and we got to the last game of the season in 83, I think it was, Canterbury versus Cronulla here at Shark Park and Endeavour Field, and you know, we had a situation where there was a kick a goal and everybody believes it wasn't a goal, and I believed it was, and George followed me, and we both went up. But you know, Canterbury protested about that, and we ended up, as it turned out, because Max and Ian had stubbed their toe somewhere else, and same day, and it looks like we probably might have gone on to get the grand final that year, but anyway, we didn't, and I still stood my dig about whether it was a goal or not a goal, and Carl Gilchrist was the appointments board man, and Carl only lived just up the road from Endeavour, and I came back in and he said, "Oh, there's been a fair bit of controversy." And I said, "Yeah, what about?" And he said, "That goal." And I said, "Oh, well." And he said, "I'm not going to give you a report." I said, "Well, you better." I said, "Because I'll be still here." He said, "I want to go and look at it on TV." And I said, "Well, you better hurry up and come back." I said, "Because I'm not moving. I'm not leaving Endeavour Field until such time as I get a report. If I've got to stay here all night, I'll stay here all night." And he said, "Oh, based on that," he said, "I've given you a bad report." So I said, "You're giving us a bad report based on what's hearsay, basically." I mean, Carl and I were very, very close, very, very close. And he said, "Yeah, he was disappointed, very disappointed, very upset about it all."
Yep.
Anyway, I accepted that, and bad luck. And the good thing about it was Sludge had won. They had a kicking contest, and the Sludge and the guy from Canterbury, I can't think of his name at the moment, they were running neck and neck. And that goal put Sludge in even with him, and then Mirror decided to give them 20 grand each. So and I'm in having a shower, and Steve walked in and said, "Where's Longhurst?" And they said, "He's in having a shower," and he comes in, he gives me a big kiss. He's got this big oversized check. He said, "This is courtesy of you, mate. 20,000, you beauty." You know, well, it's not courtesy of me, but anyway. Yeah.
So in 1983, probably earlier to that day, you touch judged the KB Cup final. It was named then at Leichhardt Oval between Manly and Cronulla. Did you enjoy that experience? What were your memories?
Yeah, it was
that
great.
night?
I ran with Brian Gately, Brian and I, and it was interesting. We went down behind the sticks at one stage, and Gately said to me, he said, "You know, if we keep going the way we're going, Longhurst, we could get the grand final." I said to him, I looked at him, I said, "Mate, this is our grand final, son." So, yeah, anyway, so that was an interesting night.
Now, your contribution to this association has been substantial. Of most note would be your stint as association treasurer from 1984 to 1985. This was particularly pertinent, seeing you just retired from on-field duties to focus on family life. Why did you decide to keep your involvement in refereeing?
Oh, look, I wanted to give something back to the association. And I had the abilities. I was a chartered accountant. There was only a couple of us around, Bobby Hunt being one. And Bobby had already done the job as the treasurer. And he didn't do the treasurer downtown. He did the treasurer at Canterbury. And I really just wanted to give back to the association. And I just did a couple of years. I thought I got the abilities. John Gosher wanted to give it away because he'd done it for quite a number of years, and I was really just giving back. And I knew I could do it. I knew I had the wherewithal to do it. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. And of course Cole was a secretary at the time. So Ian McCall and Don McDonald were the two presidents of my stint as on the executive. And they were always interesting meetings, and we all got on extremely well, and there was very few controversies. We used to have some legendary meetings with John Quayle, and poor old Ian, I think I thought he was going to have a heart attack one night, the way some of the things I used to say to John Quayle. But I had a lot of respect for John Quayle, but I just think that he didn't give us enough. He didn't do enough for us as an association. Because he was an ex-player, and referees were a nuisance to him. So I got my own back because I ran into him at a business function it was only about 4 or 5 years ago now or something, and he was in the room and he walked over and he actually said hello to me. And I said to him, "Oh, geez, John," I said, "I didn't think you'd ever remember me." And I won't use the exact words he said, but he said, "Longhurst, you were the bane of my life for 4 years. I'll never forget you." I said, "Well, I'll take that as a wrap. Thanks very much, John." That's 3 years.
A backhanded compliment. Now, it was probably this contribution, along with many others, that led you to receiving the then named George and Amy Hanson Award back in 1984. How do you look back at this achievement?
Yeah, look, that's a great honour. I mean, there's some really good names on there. Geez, you go through those names, wow, they are powerful. They are powerful names in refereeing, and to be classed amongst them pretty early after it was first introduced in 1975. Ozzie Cohen and Cyril Wigzell, Frank Walsh, wow, Austin Shiner, wow, and the great Doug Winton. Look, Grandma Braybrooks there too. So I mean, look, it's just it was just a real honour, a fantastic honour. Probably the greatest honour you can get within our association outside. Well, it is the greatest honour you can get in our association outside being a life member.
You spoke of life membership. So in 1986, you became a life member of our great association. What are your memories of being informed you were going to achieve that status and your thoughts at the time?
Well, I was very proud. I was very proud of what I had done in the association. Very proud of myself. As I said back with Brother Matthew, I'd set a goal to reach the top of whatever I was trying to do in refereeing. Maybe you could argue that's as a centre referee, but I made up my mind I was going to be a touch judge, and so I reached all but the pinnacle of that in the fact that then getting life membership of any association is a wonderful achievement, and I got it with my great mate Les Matthews. So it was just fantastic. When we joined Canterbury on exactly the same night, we got graded on the same day, and we received life membership on the same night. So quite an achievement for Leslie and I.
Now, not only have you contributed heavily at New South Wales, you've done so also in your local district in Canterbury. So your contribution to Canterbury referees has been recognised with life membership also. This came in 1993. You also received an Australian Sports Medal in 2000 and the Leo Randall Award in 2007. Your most recent recognition has come even as late as this year when you were represented with life membership. Can you tell us a little bit about the Leo Randall Award and what that meant to you, and then how highly you regard these recognitions?
Look, Canterbury's been one of the most important things in my life outside my family, my wife and my family. I said that on the night when I got represented. I only got represented with my blazer the other week because I'm getting too fat and I couldn't get into my whole blazer. No, a bit of recognition for what I've done for the association. I mean, the Leo Randall Award. There's a photograph of Jack Harvey. I think that might have been the night that he got the Leo Randall Award. I don't know whether it was myself or Jack. I don't know. I've actually got a tie, and he used to berate me when I didn't wear a tie to a ladies' night or a formal function. Look, anything that I get recognised by for Canterbury, it touches my heart because Canterbury have meant everything to me. I can't. Two of my closest friends are from Canterbury, Cole Turnell and Cliffy Haynes. Cliff hasn't got much mention, but he should have. Three of us are sort of joined at the hip. Whenever we go to anywhere, the three of us are together. And our families have been very close over a very long period of time, over nearly 50 odd years now. And, Canterbury is just so important to me. I'm just so lucky. I am just so lucky that that Reg Dick asked me to go to Abbott Park and start refereeing. And the people in Canterbury are like brothers to me. I mean, I just love every one of them, and I'm just a committed Canterbury Bankstown man. As a matter of fact, Eric Cox at one stage tried to get me out of Canterbury because he said I wasn't living in the district. Well, that wasn't true because I actually had an address at John Farrelly's place in Rewsbury, and he said to me, "So what is your address?" And I told him it was Rewsbury, and he said, "You're lying to me." I said, "No, I'm not." So, because he wanted to get me back to St George because I lived in the St George district. I've never lived in Canterbury district other than my address at John's place. So, we had that. I had that address for a number of reasons because I was underage and they were a bit scared that I think they were a bit scared they were going to lose me, and also trying to get my senior ticket. We tried to pull a few strings, and I was living in John's place. But Canterbury's been more than important to me. I'm very committed family man to Canterbury Bankstown.
I think that's one of the fantastic things about refereeing. You start off running people's touchlines, and then they end up being the people that come to your wedding. They're there for the birth of your children. It's those kind of relationships that are created that grow outside of refereeing.
Yeah, well, if you go back, Colin and I particularly, and Cliff, we were hard taskmasters for each other. We were at each other's throats, as far as on the paddock is concerned, particularly Colin and I. And I've already declared, I thought he was a much better referee than me. But but our friendships have survived all of that, in every way, and it's been fantastic, really, really fantastic.
So before we finish up, reflecting upon your many years of involvement in refereeing, what do you see as the most important thing that you will take away from your refereeing career?
Wow. Look, the friendships, the people that I have met, and yeah, the people I've met, I can't believe that, and some of the circumstances I've had, refereeing on the Sydney Career Ground, doing a couple of finals, being out in first grade. People want to know what it's like, as you probably well know. People want to know what's like out on the paddock, what's it like in the dressing rooms, and that sort of stuff. Well, it becomes sort of second nature to us because we're doing it on a week by week basis. But the friends that I've made in refereeing, both in Canterbury, and in the other associations, when you go to grade and you suddenly meet people from all various walks of life and from all other associations, and you really become very close to them, and it's just fantastic. So, and the connections that I've had, in refereeing have been extremely beneficial to me from a business point of view. So, I couldn't have had a better life, really, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've chosen the right career, and I got to virtually the top of it. I'm sure that Brother Matthew would have been proud of me, and it was great. Yeah.
Now, our fast five to finish off. What's your
Right.
signature dish?
Lamb's brains.
Favorite holiday destination?
Hawaii. When we get together with our American family, that's where we meet them, in Hawaii lots of times. Yeah.
Perfect day off?
Perfect day off. Just playing golf with my friends. Yep.
Okay. Your favourite sport outside rugby league?
Yeah, golf.
And if you could bring back one rule to rugby league, what would it be?
Play the ball. They don't play the ball anymore. You ring Cole Turnell whenever anybody plays the ball, I ring him up in a match and say, they played the ball, mate. It just drives me nuts.
Yep. All right. Thank you for your time today, Peter. For someone who I haven't had many dealings with thus far, it's been very interesting and fascinating listening to the stories you've told today. Congratulations on all your achievements, and thank you for your contribution to refereeing.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and I really appreciate the job you're doing. It's been fantastic. The interviews that I've looked at already have been fantastic. The amount of research you do and the photographs and that you've come up with are just absolutely fantastic, mate. Well done yourself, and thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, I really appreciate that, Peter, and hopefully we can catch up at a social function soon.
I'd love that, mate. Have a drink. Yeah.
Catch you around.